Where do you usually watch documentaries? On streaming services like Netflix or Amazon Prime? What if I told you that some of the most disturbing documentaries you will ever see are actually right here on YouTube? Today on Top 2 Day, we're looking at 10 disturbing documentaries you can watch on YouTube absolutely for free. Some of them are well known, while others are hidden gems that almost nobody talks about. If you're ready, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's start with number 10. Number 10, Jesus Camp, 2006.
This is a sick old world. Well, then let's just fix it. Somebody get your tools out and let's just fix this old world. We got too many Christian grown-ups that are fat and lazy.
When I was about 12 years old, my parents got a free spot at a summer camp and accidentally sent me to a Christian one. A very, very Christian one. The kind of camp where you have a rock band singing in the name of Jesus and where you're expected to pray 5 times a day. 50 days later, they got back a completely different child. One who read the Bible every day and tried to guide the entire family onto the right path. It took me quite a while to break away from that influence and form my own beliefs, but the experience showed me just how easily a teenager's impressionable mind can be shaped, little by little, day after day. Jesus Camp, 2006, is a documentary directed by Heidi Ewing and Rachel Grady that follows children attending an evangelical Christian summer camp where they are encouraged to become soldiers for Christ. The documentary mainly follows 3 deeply religious children, Levi, Rachel, and Tori, both at the camp itself and at a children's evangelical conference in Missouri. Throughout the film, viewers watch these kids preach sermons, hand out religious pamphlets, speak in tongues, and pray with an intensity that many adults would struggle to match. As the documentary goes on, the subjects become even more controversial. The children are encouraged to see themselves as an army of God, pray for political leaders, pray for America, and even take part in anti-abortion activism. We also get to see exactly what these children are being taught. All 3 of them are already deeply religious. Take Levi, for example, a 12-year-old boy who has already preached several sermons at his father's church in Missouri. He is homeschooled and learns from books promoting young Earth creationism, the belief that the Earth is only a few thousand years old. He is also taught that global warming is largely a political invention rather than a scientific reality. In short, they're getting the 2006 version of a TikTok education. Regardless of where you stand on religion, it's difficult not to walk away wondering just how much influence adults, communities, and belief systems can have on a young and impressionable mind. Having gone through something similar myself, I found Jesus Camp both difficult and uncomfortable to watch. A well-deserved number 10. Number 9. There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane, 2011. Every family has that one relative everyone trusts. The responsible one, the person you'd never expect to make a terrible mistake. On July 26, 2009, Diane Schuler loaded her 5-year-old son, her 2-year-old daughter, and her 3 nieces into her minivan and began driving home from a camping trip in upstate New York. A few hours later, she entered the Taconic State Parkway, going the wrong way at nearly 80 miles per hour, and crashed head-on into another vehicle. The accident killed 8 people, including Diane, her daughter, and her 3 nieces. Only her 5-year-old son survived. Toxicology reports revealed that Diane had a blood alcohol level equivalent to about 10 shots of vodka and had recently smoked marijuana. But her friends and family refused to believe it. What drove Diane Schuler to do what she did? Was she hiding a secret addiction? Did her family truly know who she was? Or is the truth simply too painful to accept? Some moments in the documentary make these questions even more complicated. For example, one family member casually admits on camera that her own family doesn't know she smokes. Yet moments earlier, she insisted that Diane could never have had a drinking problem.
No one in my family knows I smoke, so this is this.
It's also worth mentioning that the film contains graphic images that some viewers may find disturbing. Near the end of the documentary, photographs from the crash scene are shown, so be prepared if you decide to watch it. And if you already did, do you think Diane was hiding the truth from her family and that was systematic, or was something else going on entirely? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Number 8. Dark Days, 2000. A while ago, we talked about the Las Vegas tunnels and the thousands of people who, as of 2026, still live beneath the gambling capital of the world. The problem has become so well known that countless YouTubers and journalists have made videos about it. But the tunnels beneath New York City? Honestly, before watching Dark Days, the only underground tunnels in New York I knew about were the ones involving those viral Jewish tunnels videos. Dark Days is a documentary directed by Mark Singer that follows a community of homeless people living inside abandoned railway tunnels beneath Manhattan. With no electricity, no running water, and almost no contact with the outside world, they built an entire underground society of their own. Throughout the film, we meet men and women who have spent years, and in some cases decades, living in complete darkness. They cook, sleep, raise pets, and try to maintain a sense of normality in a place that most people would consider uninhabitable. But Dark Days isn't just about poverty or homelessness. It's about people trying to build a life in a place where life shouldn't really exist. We learn what brought these people to such a life, and before you even realize it, you start caring about them and becoming invested in their stories. One thing that elevates the documentary even further is its incredible soundtrack by DJ Shadow. The music gives the film an almost dreamlike quality, making these dark tunnels feel both depressing and, at the same time, strangely beautiful. In fact, Dark Days has become something of a time capsule. The underground community shown in the film no longer really exists. In the years following the documentary, most of the tunnel residents were relocated to public housing, and many of the makeshift homes beneath Manhattan were eventually dismantled. And if you're from New York and know more about these tunnels, or maybe even remember this hidden community, feel free to share your stories in the comment section. Now, let's move on to number 7. Number 7. White Light, Black Rain, The Destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 2007. More than 80 years have passed since the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We've all seen the photographs, heard the numbers, and read the history books. But statistics don't tell you what it was actually like to survive a nuclear explosion. White Light, Black Rain is an HBO documentary that gives a voice to the people who lived through those unimaginable events. Through interviews with survivors, the film reconstructs the horror of August 1945 in heartbreaking detail. We hear horrible stories of children watching their parents burn alive, people wandering through cities that had turned into hell within seconds, and survivors describing rivers filled with bodies and skin hanging from their arms like pieces of cloth. Some of the most disturbing moments come when the survivors recall the days and weeks after the bombing, when people who initially seemed unharmed suddenly began losing their hair, bleeding from their mouths, and dying from radiation sickness. The documentary also contains real archival footage and photographs of the victims, some of which are genuinely difficult to watch. To make things even more uncomfortable, the film also features interviews with people connected to the bombings themselves, including members of the crews involved in delivering the atomic bombs. These moments don't feel heroic or triumphant. Instead, they feel heavy. By the end of the documentary, Hiroshima and Nagasaki stop being historical events or numbers in a textbook. They become stories about ordinary people who witness something that no human being should ever have to experience. If you want to understand why this documentary is called White Light, Black Rain, go watch it on YouTube. It is absolutely free, and this film is still one of the best works on the subject. Number 6. The Act of Killing, 2012, and The Look of Silence, 2014. This is already the third time we're talking about these documentaries on the channel, and honestly, I don't mind repeating myself because I genuinely believe that Joshua Oppenheimer is one of the greatest documentary filmmakers of this century. His films don't just tell stories about historical atrocities, they expose the true nature of evil and the human beings behind it, stripping away the mask and revealing what lies underneath. These two films complement each other perfectly, but let's start from the beginning. The Act of Killing follows former Indonesian death squad leaders responsible for the mass killings of 1965 to 66. The truly bizarre part is that many of these men were never punished and are still treated as heroes in their communities. Oppenheimer asked them to recreate their crimes in whatever style they want. Gangster films, westerns, even musicals. You watch men casually describe torture and murder, laughing and smiling as if they're remembering a fun day from their youth. At first glance, they don't seem to regret their actions for even a second. But is that really the case? Oppenheimer does an extraordinary job, and by the finish, he slowly peels back the facade and reveals a very different side of one of the former executioners. The Look of Silence, 2014, on the other hand, tells the story of Addio, a man whose brother was brutally murdered during the Indonesian genocide. If I remember correctly, after the release of the act of killing, Oppenheimer was approached by survivors and relatives of the victims who wanted their side of the story to be told as well. As for Addio, his journey is nothing short of extraordinary. He sits face to face with men who personally took part in the killings, some of whom openly describe how they murdered prisoners, drank their blood to avoid going crazy, and still speak about these events with shocking honesty. But will Addio actually meet the men responsible for his brother's death? And if he does, will he finally get the answers he has been searching for? I'll leave that for you to discover yourself. Both films are also beautifully made. Despite the horrific subject matter, Oppenheimer's direction is incredibly patient, methodical, and at times almost hypnotic. The Look of Silence in particular has this strange, dreamlike quality to it. Every shot feels carefully composed, making the entire film even more unsettling. Both films are absolute masterpieces, and I highly recommend checking out at least one of them, especially since they are both available on YouTube for free. Number 5. Africa, Addio, 1966. In Africa, there is only one truly wild animal, the human. These words open the 1966 documentary Africa, Addio, directed by Gualtiero Jacopetti and Franco Prosperi. This is one of the most graphic documentaries on today's list. It contains footages of massacres of animals, tribal hunts, executions, genocidal acts, and war crimes. The directors of this Mondo shockumentary were even taken to court on accusations that some executions were staged under their direction. However, the charges were never proven and were eventually dropped. The directors themselves have always claimed that they simply filmed what was happening without interfering. Whether they crossed an ethical line or not is still up for debate. But one thing is certain, the footage they captured will shock almost anyone watching this film for the first time. Some of the most horrifying scenes come from the Zanzibar Revolution, where the crew captured mass executions and bodies left scattered across beaches and burial sites. Even nearly 60 years later, these images remain deeply disturbing. The film also documents the brutal war against poachers and the large-scale killing of animals. If you're sensitive to animal cruelty, I would genuinely advise you to approach this documentary with caution. What makes Africa Addio so unique is that many of these moments were captured only by this crew. In some cases, the documentary preserves footage that simply doesn't exist anywhere else. Another reason the film remains so controversial is its political undertone. The narration frequently pushes pro-colonial ideas, portraying decolonization as a process that led primarily to violence, instability, and suffering. Whether that's a fair portrayal or not is entirely up to you to decide, because the film is available on YouTube completely free of charge, although several scenes have been removed. Regardless of your opinion on its politics, Africa Addio remains a truly unique piece of cinema, and it's hard to imagine a documentary like this being made in today's world. Number 4. Children of Darkness, 1983. The reason this Oscar-nominated documentary took 4th place on today's list is simple. It is unbelievably painful to watch. Honestly, I believe only a few of you will make it all the way through, and if you already did, let me know in the comments just how difficult it was for you. There are documentaries that shock you with violence, and then there are documentaries like this one, films that completely break your heart. Most of us like to believe that childhood is a time of innocence, friendship, and happy memories. But for some children, reality looks very different. Children of Darkness is a documentary about children and teenagers struggling with severe mental illnesses and developmental disorders. The film takes viewers inside psychiatric hospitals, treatment centers, and special schools, introducing us to young people dealing with schizophrenia, autism, depression, violent behavior, and profound emotional trauma. The documentary doesn't have one main character. It simply takes you from one child to another, from one heartbreaking story to the next. And after a while, you stop seeing diagnoses and start seeing kids who are suffering and don't fully understand why. What makes this documentary so difficult is that it doesn't hide behind statistics or medical terms. It simply puts a camera in front of these children and lets them speak, scream, cry, or sometimes sit in complete silence. One moment you're watching a child desperately trying to make friends, and the next you're seeing another child talk about wanting to die. Some of them become violent, some hurt themselves, and some are painfully aware that something is wrong, but are too young to explain what they're feeling. There were moments when I had to pause the film for a few minutes, not because it was graphic, but because it felt overwhelmingly sad. Films like this open a door into a reality that most of us rarely think about, and once you look through that door, you don't come back quite the same. You realize that there are children out there fighting battles that many adults couldn't survive. And honestly, the more you learn about the darker sides of this world, the harder it becomes to sleep at night. This documentary already has more than 10 million views on YouTube, which says a lot about its impact and enduring power, despite the incredibly difficult subject matter it explores. Number 3. Just Melvin, Just Evil, 2000. Just Melvin, Just Evil is a deeply personal documentary made by filmmaker James Ronald Whitney about his own grandfather, Melvin, a man accused of sexually abusing multiple members of his family over several generations. We've already talked about this film in a previous video about true crime documentaries, but since it's available to watch on YouTube completely free of charge, we simply couldn't leave it off this list. So, Just Melvin, Just Evil follows filmmaker and family member James Ronald Whitney as he interviews his relatives and uncovers a horrifying cycle of abuse that left emotional scars on almost everyone who came into contact with Melvin.
I read how you'd bring them into your bedroom, ask them to rub your back. You wore no clothes in bed. Then you'd have them lie next to you and you would molest them.
The deeper he digs, the worse the story becomes. One family member after another comes forward and describes how Melvin's actions shaped, and in many cases, destroyed their lives. But perhaps the most infuriating part of the documentary isn't Melvin himself. It's the realization that so many adults around him knew something was wrong and still failed to protect the children who needed them the most. Some of the interviews are genuinely difficult to sit through. The hardest part comes when Melvin himself agrees to appear on camera. Instead of breaking down or showing remorse, he often minimizes what happened, denies certain accusations, changes the subject, and at times behaves as if these horrific events were simply unfortunate misunderstandings. By the end, this film stops being just a documentary about one monstrous man. It becomes a documentary about generational trauma, and about how the actions of a single person can poison an entire family for decades. This film leaves a very bitter feeling behind and is not something I would recommend to everyone. But if we're talking about the hardest documentaries to sit through, then Just Melvin, Just Evil absolutely deserves its place near the top of this list. It is absolutely free for watch on YouTube, but in low quality. Number 2. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father, 2008. Dear Zachary is, without exaggeration, one of the greatest documentaries ever made, and, without a doubt, one of the most extraordinary independent documentaries I've ever seen. What makes it even more remarkable is that this entire film was essentially created by one man as a tribute to his best friend. Unlike most films on today's list, there is no graphic footage here. No disturbing crime scene photos, no shocking videos, nothing designed to traumatize the viewer. And yet, this may be one of the hardest documentaries to sit through, because this film does something incredibly rare. It takes real pain and real tragedy and transfers them directly to the viewer, forcing us to feel it, accept it, and go through it alongside the filmmaker and the family. Written, directed, edited, shot, and even scored by Kurt Cooney, tells the story of his close friend Andrew Bagby, who was murdered shortly after ending a relationship with a woman named Shirley Turner. At first, the documentary has a very simple purpose. Kurt wants to create a video letter for Andrew's unborn son, Zachary, a way for the boy to one day know the father he would never get the chance to meet. So he travels across the country, interviewing Andrew's parents, friends, classmates, and colleagues. Through their memories, Andrew slowly comes back to life on screen. You begin to know him, laugh at his stories, and understand why so many people loved him. Then, the documentary takes several turns that will put you through a genuine emotional roller coaster. I don't want to ruin the experience by saying anything more about the plot, so I'll stop right here. Chances are, you'll cry, so be prepared. And if you need something a little less heartbreaking afterward, I'd also recommend watching The Legacy of Dear Zachary, A Journey to Change Law. It explores the impact the documentary had on society and the real-world changes that followed its release. Kurt Cooney's work remains one of the greatest achievements in documentary filmmaking. And while it may seem strange to place the tragedy of a single family above events like those shown in Africa Addio, this film simply hits harder on an emotional level. If you've never seen Dear Zachary, gather your strength and find it on YouTube. You probably won't regret watching it and definitely won't forget it. Number 1. A Certain Kind of Death, 2003. And finally, we've reached number 1, a documentary we've never talked about on this channel before. Part of the reason it ended up here is exactly because of that, but the other reason is simpler. This is the most graphic and difficult documentary you can find on YouTube. A Certain Kind of Death, directed by Grover Babcock and Blue Hadeg, shows the final journey of people who died completely alone, forgotten by society, and, in many cases, by everyone who once knew or loved them. The documentary begins with the discovery of an unidentified body in Los Angeles. As the investigation progresses, that body is identified as Ronald Eugene Tanner, whom we'll talk about shortly. From there, the camera follows every step that comes next. The coroner's office, the morgue, the attempts to identify the deceased, and finally, the grim process that awaits those whom nobody comes to claim. We see real, dead bodies, decomposed remains, cremations, and the quiet, almost routine work of people whose job is to deal with death every single day. One of the central stories follows Ronald Eugene Tanner, a man who died completely alone. His partner had died years earlier, most of his family was already gone, and there was almost nobody left to remember him. Even after death, bureaucratic problems continue. His belongings are sold at an estate sale to help cover funeral expenses, and officials discover that the family plot where he wished to be buried no longer has any space left. The film also follows several other unclaimed cases and shows what eventually happens to those whom nobody comes to claim. Their bodies are cremated, their remains are stored in small metal boxes for years, and in the end, they are buried together in an unmarked mass grave marked only by a small plaque bearing the year of their deaths. It's an incredibly bleak documentary, but also a deeply human one. More than anything, A Certain Kind of Death is a reminder of how easily a person can disappear, and how, in the end, some people leave this world without anyone even noticing they're gone. After watching it, all you want to do is hug the people you love. Take care of yourselves, and never take the people who truly care about you for granted. If you decide to watch this film, it's available on YouTube in its uncensored form. I hope you found at least a few documentaries worth adding to your watch list. If you know even more disturbing documentaries available on YouTube, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. And one more thing, if you enjoyed this video more than most and you'd like to support this channel financially, you can now do so by clicking the Super Thanks button below this video. Every donation will be appreciated, and every supporter will have their name featured in future videos. It's not much for now, but we have to start somewhere. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.